Hello there. Let's have a little talk about something called a visual metaphor. It's an old school filmmaking technique. It's been around since the beginning of cinema, where a filmmaker will show you something without showing you something. And there's some really interesting examples out there. And the reason it's really important to know what they are and how they work is because we're seeing a lot of them come through in right wing advertising campaigns for political parties at the moment. And that's because we haven't seen left wing political party video launches yet. So the right wing ones are the ones that we're using as an example here. If you have a look at something like Pleasantville as an example, this climatic scene in Pleasantville is a really good use of a visual metaphor because it doesn't show you the climatic scene in Pleasantville, which helps things like MPAA ratings. And we don't see a lot of sitting down talking directly to camera from right wing parties, which seems to be much more of a left leaning type of methodology for the videos that they're making. One of the things that's really fascinating, though, is that we don't see it a lot in our advertising here. So it tends to stand out a little bit more when we see it in ads. There are some great examples of it, like this, the road toll ad, which, you know what it means without showing you the graphic violence that it would actually mean if they showed you directly what was happening. Now, in terms of the political ads that we've seen so far, you've got somebody like Winston getting back on his horse and going to the rodeo for some weird reason. And this is a low angle looking up, which is a position of power and authority. But it's really well lit as well, so it's a position of trust. When you look at something like the National Party campaign, that's also a slightly lower angle looking up, but because you've got a strong backlight and an almost silhouette look to Christopher Luxon, that actually instills a lot more fear and anxiety than I think the filmmakers realized that they were doing, or they did it on purpose and completely misread the audience. Over the last couple of days, we've seen a video from ACT come out with David Seymour on a rugby field, and it starts off with shots of people kicking the ball and throwing the ball and showcasing that, teamwork is a good thing for everybody to have a good time. When you look at David, it's direct eye lines, so you trust him, apparently. But of course, it's a metaphor, so it's not going to point out the fact that even though he wants you to think he's a team player, he said things like this. And at the same time, there isn't 5 people on the bench that have all been red carded holding up a sign saying that the game is rigged. Because, that seems to be the caliber of the candidates that he's getting at the moment. When you're watching political ads or any ads and you see visual metaphors, they are designed really specifically as a shortcut to give you an impression. You might not necessarily know that at the start when you're watching it, but hopefully if it's done well, you know that at the end you've got this impression happening. Definitely keep an eye out on it, and it's not a good thing or a bad thing, it's just a really interesting storytelling tool. And the more that you know about these kind of tools and how they're used, the more that you can sit there and disseminate information and interpret exactly what it is that you're being shown.